It's really, really nice to be here, I have to say. I want to thank Rishi, first of all, for inviting me to come back after what seems a lifetime, and it has been 1989. Can't believe it. And also, obviously, I want to thank LSBU for inviting me back as well. It's really, really nice to have this opportunity to come along and to share some of my experiences with you, and to meet so many colleagues, past and present. So hopefully I'll get a chance afterwards to talk to some of you. Please feel free to come and see me afterwards. I'll be here for a short while afterwards. I do hope you find this helpful. But before we begin, I should really just say a little bit about myself, because you might be thinking, who is she, really? Okay, well, there you go. I did actually come here. 1985 was the first time that I actually graduated from a course here. Now I'm really beginning to show my age. And finally left here in 1989. I got the HNC in Business Studies in 1985, and then I went on and did an Institute of Personal Management. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's now changed its name. But essentially, it was a personnel management, and that's the role that I held at that time. I then went on to do a teaching qualification. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And that was my first degree, actually, formal degree. And then I got the bug for learning and the bug for education, and went on to do a BA honours, a Master's in Education Management, and then finally my doctorate. Yeah, I got it at last. Many years later, I actually got that. Okay. That was my academic journey. Now, in terms of my professional journey, I was described once by somebody else as a late starter. And I can understand that. My first professional, if you want to call it, job was as a clerical assistant. I had done a few jobs since that, having left school at the age of 16, 17, with very few qualifications. I eventually managed to get a role in, does anybody remember the GLC? The Greater London Council. Okay, I won't go too much, that'll show my age again. However, I stayed there and went on to become a human resources manager, personnel manager, which is when I came to South Bank, as it was then, LSBU. And just to throw in, at that time, day release was still very popular. So I actually came here as a part-time student. I don't know if anybody knows the GLC or knows the history of the Inner London Education Authority. However, I was one of the unfortunates that managed to become redundant 3 times in the space of a year and a half. I think it was around the time that Margaret Thatcher was in power. And I'll say no more then about that. But then I decided I wanted to get something a bit more secure. The days had gone when we had jobs for life. So I decided to go into teaching. And I had a young one at the time as well, so it worked well in terms of my life, my lifestyle, and what I needed to do and be around for in terms of my daughter. I didn't stay long as a teacher in the secondary schools. I went very quickly on to colleges. And then before I knew it, because I'd already held a management position, I was one of those people that kept thinking, I can do better than you, I can do better than you. And I decided to push it a little bit and became head of school, course manager, head of school, the usual progression, quality curriculum, senior manager in a big South London college. And then I got a little burnt out. And I think it was at that point that I started to realise the importance of the subject that I'm going to be talking about today, which is emotional intelligence. I decided then to leave one institution and see if there was anything that I could do, thinking emotionally intelligently, I thought at that time, to spread a little bit more of my expertise. So I was seconded to the Department for Education as what they called then a subject expert practitioner. That was when the emotional intelligence really had to kick in, but we'll talk about that a bit later as well. However, in 2005, I decided, because I did really relish and enjoyed the opportunity to share my expertise much wider, to start working for myself. And since then, I've become an independent trainer, consultant, and I do focus on education, leadership and management, and equality and diversity. The key thing there I want to share with you is that through that academic and professional journey, other things obviously were going on, my personal life. And I'm sure that all of you here will understand the roller coaster of life. And although that looks like, oh, nice little personal academic journey, trust me, it wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. As I say, life does have its ups and downs, and I use the word roller coaster. And if anybody is familiar with Alton Towers, I'm not really, but I've heard about it. And I know there's a roller coaster there that actually goes, a revolution that goes upside down. And I can tell you through all of this academic and professional journey, and I know that you will resonate, sometimes it really felt like my whole world had just turned upside down. And going back to the subject of today, really and truly, it was my own development of my emotional intelligence that's helped me through all of those ups and downs, and that has got me here right now. And that's really, I hope, the reason why you're here, to recognise the importance of emotional intelligence, not just in your employability skills, not just in terms of work, but really in supporting you in getting through life's roller coaster journey. Okay, so as Rishi has already said to you, the talk was advertised as emotional intelligence being the ability to understand and manage our emotions as well as those around us. When Rishi asked me to do this talk, emotional intelligence is a very big subject, and I know that most of you will be aware of the term, and probably some will know more about it. So you will know that it is a massive topic. However, I did need to think very carefully about how much I could cover with you within an hour. And these are the aims. This is what I'm hoping I'll be able to share with you, and that you will have gained from the talk by the hour. So let's have a look at this. So I've said that you will gain a basic understanding of emotional intelligence. And as I've already mentioned to you, some of you will know something about this already. We're all doing it all the time. It's whether you're aware that you're doing it and how able you are to actually consciously get your emotional intelligence really working for you. So for many of you, this will be a review and a reminder. And do take this hour's opportunity, not just to listen to me, but to actually start beginning to begin to reflect about how this could work for you, how it's working for you as you're sitting right in the room. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to, hopefully, is to get you to understand how emotion affects relationships, how emotions can affect your work performance, and obviously your employability, your leadership development. But most importantly, I really do hope that by the end of this session, you will be able to go away with some practical skills that you can use immediately, skills that you are now more aware of, skills that you already have, and as I said, we are using them, skills that you're more aware of and can go out there and actually start practicing straight away. And it is about practicing. So, on that note, I'd like you to just have a look at this quote from Aristotle's books called the Nicomachean Ethics, documented as being written in 350 BC. So that will tell you this subject's been going on a very long time. Anyone can become angry. That's easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way, that is not so easy. Okay, on that note, I'm going to share a little something with you. You have to look at me now. Okay, I'm going to share a little story with you. Not so long ago, and it should have been, well, yeah, a long time ago, I'll say that, a long time ago, I had an experience where my daughter took suddenly ill at home. And it was one of those illnesses where, and I'm sure you can identify with this, she was in pain and painkillers, let's see how it goes. But by the next morning, there was no time for doctor's appointments or anything. I raced her straight to accident and emergency. Something crucial was going on, and it frightened me, and she was clearly in a lot of pain. So we've ended up at accident and emergency, 7:30 in the morning, and those of you that have experienced that, there's the wait. And while we're waiting, she's in pain, and I'm getting more frustrated. Because those of you that have been there, we all think that when these situations arise, we are the most important person. My daughter is the most important person to me, and I wanted her healed. Tell me what's wrong. Tell her what's wrong. Let's heal her. It wasn't happening. 9:30, we still hadn't been seen yet. 10:30, she got assessed. Blood pressure, temperature. By about 1:30, 2:30, we managed at last to get her into a bay, and the doctor came, she was examined, painkillers given. Okay, but she wasn't getting any better. My view was that she should have been admitted, put on a ward, all the tests in the world that could possibly be done so we can find out what's wrong with her. Can anybody identify with me? Okay, some of you have been there. I want this done. It wasn't happening. Can you believe at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and actually it was a day like today, rainy. Thank you for coming, by the way. It's really cold out there, isn't it? Okay, it was cold, it was dark, and they told me I had to take her home. So clearly there wasn't anything that major wrong with her, but that didn't go with me. But nevertheless, had to take her home, but she couldn't walk properly, she was in pain, so I had to go and get the car, which I'd left and forgotten about. So guess what I had on the car? Parking ticket. Okay. I was so angry. But I had to hold it down because she was unwell. And plus, I'm a professional. So I've got to... But I am just fuming. Anyway, eventually got her to the car, put her to lay down. She's in agony, so I put the seat down so she's flat, and I'm driving home slowly. Cold, wet, rainy, but I was going slow, admittedly. All of a sudden, 5-10 minutes from home, I've seen this beam of light in the mirror right up behind me, and I thought, what's that? What's going on? Horn going. I was clearly going too slow for somebody behind me. I was fuming, but I had to stay calm because my daughter's unwell and I'm a professional. I can deal with these situations. I've done emotional intelligence. Anyway, I'm coming up to a roundabout. I mean, if you all know, anyway, I don't know if anybody knows East Dulwich Goose Green. I'm coming up to the roundabout from the King's College Hospital, and can you believe this vehicle went up halfway on the pavement on my left to overtake me to get to the roundabout first. But I'm a professional. Anyway, I stayed calm, my daughter's in pain, I'm going slowly, and I'm thinking, anyway. Went round the roundabout, going up Lordship Lane, and I'm okay, I'm just coming up to the junction to turn left, I've got to get her home, got to get her in bed, and can you believe I saw a police car come behind me. Vroom, sirens going and everything, and in my mind I'm thinking, I wonder if he's going after that car. Maybe they saw, somebody must have reported it, sure enough. Got to the corner to turn left into my road. Police car stopped them. Let me tell you, I don't know where this came from. I swear this is out of character. I pulled up next to the police car where they put, and I jumped out of the car and I started, arrest them, put them in jail, throw away the key. And my daughter's like, what? Because she, honestly, and the police came up, madam, we've got this under, I don't know what came over me. We have got this under control. Please get back in your car. I said, throw away the key, look at it. And you know something, within seconds, I looked at this young man. Honestly, I was mortified. He could have been my nephew. He looked terrified, and he's looking at me, and he's looking at the policeman, and they're kind of, roughing him up. And I just thought, it took me weeks to get over that. I felt so bad. However, let's just go back to that. Anyone can be angry. That's the easy part. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right way. I did lose it. But that was a combination. It wasn't really for him. It was a combination. I had a parking ticket. My daughter was ill. They hadn't sorted her out properly. That's not true. The NHS are fantastic, and they did a fantastic job. Unfortunately, she did get better. But you can see I've been waiting. I hadn't had anything to eat, the frustration, etc., etc. So basically, I just wanted to share that story with you. And just to finish that, you can see, does anybody know the book, Daniel Goleman? Okay, you must buy that book, and I'll say a little bit more about that book. It's here. I had to bring it to show you. Because that Christmas, amongst all my little presents for my daughter under the tree, can you believe? That book was there. And that is the opening of the book. Do you think she was trying to tell me something? Some of the steps that I've identified in terms of what is emotion. Everything that you've just shared is actually correct. Okay? A feeling. Many of you said that. Your thoughts when you have that feeling is part of the steps of understanding that emotion. There you go, the psychological and biological states that are involved. That's all part of emotion. And then it's the acting it out, the reactions, which you said, the range of reactions, the range of behaviours that are actually acted out. So these are the different aspects and elements of emotion. Now, going back to your question, sir, let me just say, there you go. These are emotions. And what I've tried to do here, I'm not a psychologist by trade, if you want to call it that. However, there is a view that some psychologists look for a way of actually classifying emotions. And one of them I've just adapted slightly to make it work for us here. Looks at emotions in the terms of families. So what I've tried to do here is to kind of split them up in terms of the primary, the core emotion, and then those secondary emotions that might be attached. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list. Of course, there are going to be many other emotions. And there's one core emotion that I have missed off on there, but actually encompasses three of those things. And that's that emotion of jealousy. Jealousy can encompass anger, sadness, and love sometimes. Okay, so obviously this is not, this is something that can be further developed, but I've simplified it really just for us. And just to go through some of these in terms of emotions, what is an emotion? Anger, for example. Anger being the primary emotion, the core emotion, can link onto other secondary emotions, and not just the two that I've got up there. There are more things, more secondary emotions, resentment, hostility. And with something like anger, as is shown up there, you can go to the extreme. That anger can manifest itself into hatred and violence. Okay, we can have a look at another one there. Let's see, love. Okay, again, love being the core emotion can manifest itself in acceptance, trust, infatuation, but it can go to the extreme and have that secondary emotion of obsession attached to it. And as I say, there are more, right? But it's just worth just having an understanding of what emotions can actually become in that sense and how they manifest themselves. I just want to point out that Rishi has said that you will have copies of this slide, so you will have all of this information there. For those of you that I can see are taking notes, by all means do so, but you will get copies of this. Okay. How do we show and read our emotions? Now, this is a term that's used by many psychologists as well. It's called leakage, emotional leakage. So what I want you to do now, again, for just a couple more minutes, is just to share with your colleagues how you actually show or read other people's emotions. Let's get you really thinking about in tune. Start developing these skills now, Okay, so a couple of minutes. Tell me how you show or read emotions. Okay, so emotional leakage. Emotions cannot be ignored. And research will show that if you try and ignore your emotions, it will come out in some other way. And you will observe that with others as well. I mean, have you ever had a situation where you've gone in from work and you've just shouted at your partner or your child or your children, and it's like, whoa, what was that about? Wasn't meant for them. All right, something's happened during the day, something's happened at work. Okay? So it's one of those things, and what psychologists refer to in terms of emotional leakage is just exactly that. Your emotions are leaking out, you're not in control. You're not thinking about the other person. You're giving out something that isn't meant for that other person. That's emotional leakage. So basically, when you bottle up your emotions, you're likely to express them in an unintended way. I should have actually said at the hospital, I'm really annoyed that you're not taking her in, but I was being professional. Okay, there you go. Signs of emotional leakage. And yes, you all said this, I'm sure. The voice. How many of you notice in yourself that when you're emotional, your voice goes? You can put your hand up if you want to. Okay, so your voice, so you're aware of it. That's good. How often have you been in a situation where you're maybe in an argument with somebody and you hear their voice start to quiver and you think, right, I'm getting in there now because I've got them now. Okay, how aware are you of that in other people? How often do you take that on board in terms of the way you interact? Your breathing. Okay, it's very, it's a big sign if, for example, I heard anything from any of you like, I'd be like, oh dear, I think they're bored. Okay, you're breathing. How many of you recognise in yourself that when you start to get really anxious, you start to breathe really shallow or anything around that? There you go. You can put your hand up if you want to. Okay, right, you need to start getting more in touch with that. Know where your emotional leakages are, because I'm pretty sure that if you're aware that's happening, other people are also noticing it in you. Okay? Your skin. Basically, these are the signs of emotional leakage. These are the things that we need to recognise in ourselves and, where possible, in others, so that you can actually start managing it. If, for example, I'd realised, given the situation that I'd given, that I was getting that angry, I should have known because I was driving, but when the car overtook me, my knee started to shake. Fortunately, I've got an automatic car, so it was, you know, it wasn't the brake for, anyway. All right, but really, it did. And I should have said, right, hold on a minute. I'm holding this down, but right now, I know that I am so angry that anything could happen at this moment. All right, but I ignored it. I just wanted to get home. But can you see my point? Okay. So, muscle tone and movement. As I just said to you, muscle tone, that tends to happen to me when I get emotional. Energy level, some people get flat. Facial expressions, that came up a lot. Right, so, moving on from emotions now, we're looking at the real issue of emotional intelligence. And just to give you a bit of a background, even though I've shown you Aristotle's quotation, 350 BC, or circa that time, this is when the term emotional intelligence was actually coined for the first time. It was 1990. And in that sense, it's a relatively new thing. 3 people did the original article, but it was Salovey and Mayer who actually took it further. And in 1997, I think I mean, if you go onto the internet, you'll get all sorts of definitions about emotional intelligence. But for the purpose of today, I've kind of simplified one. And again, Rishi actually introduced it in the beginning. So there we've got the ability to identify and manage your own emotions and emotions of others. Okay, but basically, 4 key skills have actually been identified there. Key skills that you should be able to work on to develop your own emotional intelligence. The 4 key skills that were summarised are the perception, perceiving emotion in yourself and others, which we've already started doing, understanding those meanings, understanding emotional meanings, looking at the patterns, the behaviours, which have also come up in the discussions we've had so far. Thinking about how you can facilitate those emotions. How do you harness them? How do you actually make them work for you in a positive way? Developing that skill is difficult. There's no way of getting away from that. It takes practice. Just like any other skill, emotional intelligence takes practice. And then, of course, it's the managing emotions. How do you regulate your own emotions? How able you are to do that? So those are the 4 key skills that I would say to you are the areas that you need to try and start practicing and developing to make sure that you get to a level where your emotional intelligence has an impact, just not just at work, but on the family and your whole well-being. Now, one of the things about emotional intelligence, once you start reading into this, if you haven't done so already, you'll see that the issue of IQ always comes up somewhere. And I'm sure you will come up with that question of what is the difference, IQ versus EQ. And if you have a look at that. So this term is often brought up in terms of emotional intelligence. So I thought it would be useful just to put a slide in there, just to clarify some of the issues around that for you. Now, again, I'm not a psychologist, but my understanding of IQ is that it's a quantifiable test that actually calculates a person's intellectual reasoning skills. And I do know that at one point, and I still think so, it was seen as the most effective way to find out how successful you would be in management, in business, in leadership. But, as I'm sure you're all aware, hence the reason why this session's here, we are now finding that emotional intelligence is a far more effective way of ascertaining how successful you will be in terms of business, leadership, as a person as a whole. IQ is tested, and I have an issue with that because I tend to think that the tests that are put forward are a bit culturally biased. Okay, so that's just a personal view. I haven't researched it enough for me to be able to say that is a definite, but that's what I believe. But emotional intelligence is a skill that can be learned. And that's the question. If it is so important, can it be taught or developed? And I actually do believe that it can be. Another way of looking at this is, some of you will recognise this, the iceberg analogy. And as you can see, there's a ship coming along there. And the visual way of demonstrating this is that what that ship sees is the tip of the iceberg. Generally speaking, it will try to avoid the tip of the iceberg. What it's not seeing is what's underneath. And that's how I see IQ versus EQ. IQ are your accomplishments, your experience, your skills. And generally speaking, that's visible. You'll demonstrate that in your leadership roles. What you don't see are these 5 elements belief: motivation, level of self-awareness, that ability to empathise, your social skills, and your ability to regulate your emotions. Now, when we talk about leadership, and I've mentioned that a couple of times, I just want to make sure that you're aware that leadership is not just about having the word manager after your name or the word leader after your name. It really is about the art of persuading people to work towards a common goal. Again, I've mentioned Goleman because that was a quote from this book. You can see how much I rate this book, so please do go out and buy it, I have to say. And I'm not on any kind of commission or anything. It genuinely is a good book. All right, but it's not just about leading others, it's about leading yourself. Recognising your emotions and acting on them, being reflective, being rational. So having said all of that now, coming towards the end, and I've got one more question for you. Why is it important to develop your emotional intelligence? And you can actually talk to me, you don't have to talk to each other. Why do you think it's important? Having said all of that, you can talk to me if you want to. Build relationships, absolutely. Build your self-awareness. Say a bit more. Yeah, develop your self-awareness. I liked that one. What was it? Somebody said something about burnout. Minimize burnout. To become a better person. Whether we like it or not, we are fast getting to the point where we are being tested, or we are going to be tested. A lot of organisations are testing your emotional intelligence. I can tell you that I went for a job, and it was a good few years ago, and where I was told I was taking a personality assessment, and you know, those that have gone for any of those positions, or the senior position, you'll know that that is part of the assessment process. But what I couldn't understand is that from 8 people, the first thing you did was the test, and then only 3 were interviewed. Fortunately, I was one of them. But when I really look at that, it wasn't just about personality, it was really about how you deal with certain situations. Okay, and I tend to think that that is going to be the case. It is going to be the case. I only this morning picked up on my an organisation that's developed an emotional intelligence test, basically saying that that is the way that it's going, and they're selling it. So if anybody feels there's a gap in the market and they want to, there you go. But yeah, that's absolutely true. Why it's important, you said it again, your performance at work. We are going to start being judged even more blatantly, I think I'll use the word, in terms of your performance at work, your emotional intelligence, your physical health. Somebody mentioned about burnout. Burnout can affect you physically and it can affect you mentally. There are very good reasons why you need to develop your emotional intelligence, and of course, your interaction with others, your relationships. And I'll mention again my situation with the road rage thing with the police, and it made me stupid. The stress made me stupid. That is why it's important. And can I just say, that situation wasn't long, it shouldn't have happened. So it's not something that you think, oh, I'm aware of emotional intelligence now. I'm really aware. I can self-regulate. It's ongoing. Things are going to catch you without you realising it. This is why it takes practice. All right? Don't let it catch you where you get into a situation where, believe it or not, I'm not going to say it's happened to me, you end up getting sacked because you lost it for a second. All right? You said something to the manager. They may have deserved it, but you didn't deal with it in an emotionally literate way. Okay. And there's the book. All right, Goleman, if you do get the book, you'll see that he focuses on education and leadership. Hence the reason why I really like it. And, you know, one of my things is that we need to start bringing this into schools. Okay? We will have a better world completely if we can start pushing this in the schools. And it says it here. It's a little, you know, just one aspect of it. More cooperation from young people with each other, less bullying. There's horrific things that I'm hearing that's going on out there with some of our young people. And if we could just try and harness this much more, I think these sort of things would limit. Personally, I don't think there'll be any world wars, but there you go. And I really mean that. Goleman, just as a summary, looks at 5 particular key skills that you can go away and start developing immediately. Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, and the other 2 are empathy and social skills. And I'm just going to go back on that again. Self-awareness, know your moods. Some of you have already made it very clear that you know what your emotions are. Think about it in terms of the effects on others. Self-regulation. Try and look at how to develop making those moods as less disruptive as possible. Find ways for yourself, and I'll give you a few tips before we finish. Goleman talks about motivation and this passion, not to just work for money or for status, but really to find a reason for working. How do you actually keep yourself motivated? How do you develop that skill? Find ways of actually doing that. And again, I'll show you some little tips before we go. This thing about empathy, and I know that many of us can sense what others are feeling, but we don't always take it on board. In actual fact, sometimes we actually capitalize on somebody feeling a certain way. I know they're feeling like that, so I'm going to make them feel like that more. Okay? It's human nature in many ways. However, it's not really being emotionally intelligent. Okay? And of course, social skills. This will help in terms of your networking. How well you are at building relationships will definitely help you in the workplace. Okay, I've already tried to get you starting to do that right now. And remember, this is an alumni. So when you do leave this evening, try and at least get the contact of somebody else. This is how you start building relationships. Okay, this is all emotional intelligence. So there you are. The 5 competencies, the 5 skills that you could actually take away right now and start trying to work on and develop. So have a look at these. Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. Think of one of these where you think you could do with a little bit more development. Because as I've already said, you're all doing this already, but there may be 1 or 2 that you need to actually start practicing more. Have a look at these, think about it, and start practicing it straight away. How can we improve our emotional intelligence? I'm going to give you some tips here now. And these tips are not directly linked to those skills, but I can assure you that by trying to take on board some of these, it will naturally have an effect and an impact. Clearly, reducing stress. Stress, emotional intelligence, they go hand in hand. Try and reduce your stress. Recognize your emotions, but keep them from overwhelming you. We know they're there. You're not going to be able to change them. It's human nature. You are going to be emotional. Do not let those emotions overwhelm you. There's this whole study about non-verbal communication. One of the things that I have found that I do more now, I do travel backwards and forwards from the Caribbean, and the island that my family are from, some of you might recognise this. It's not like London. I live right by a bus stop in London. And when I step out, if I do what I do in Tobago and what other people do in Tobago, I've just told you where I'm from, people look at me like I'm mad in London. But in Tobago, if you see anybody on the road, you say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You do not pass anybody without saying that. Well, because when I try and do it in London, people look like me, like I'm mad, I found another way, and it works so well. So when I see somebody first thing in the morning, I smile. It is amazing, the response. So rather than take the risk of being looked like, whoa, really, I smile, I give it eye contact. What a difference that makes. Okay, so that I know that's something that I think I'm going to start trying to do more of. And use humour and play. Some of us, because of life's journeys, because of the roles we have, we're a bit too serious. Bring a bit of humour into your life. Play a bit, and you'll see the difference that it makes overall on those other 5 key skills. Oh, and don't forget, resolve conflicts positively. Okay, come to that. So, just stress busters. Realise when you're stressed, identify your stress response, and think about your stress busting techniques. I know mine now. If I can make it till a Friday evening, music. Friday evenings is my evening, and I have a little spot, and I just go and play music. And I'm telling you, I'm set up for the rest of the week. Make it again till next Friday, and it's fine. That's my stress buster. What is yours? Okay? Think about it. Use it. Clearly, well, that's not quite the case, but I was about to say you can't play music when you're at work and you're in a stressful situation, but you can actually nowadays. What they call them? I don't actually got one. MP, well, anyway, you know what I mean. Okay? What kind of relationship do you have with your emotions? Get in touch with your emotions. Feel those sensations in your stomach, in your chest. Identify with them. Okay? When you're feeling it, just You don't even have to do anything. When you're actually practicing, just feel it. Okay, I have to be honest, I had a few flutters when I came here earlier, and I felt the flutters, and I swallowed, and I did what I needed to do, and it was fine, I hope. You'll tell me afterwards. Okay? Be aware of those facial expressions, and you said that. Think about what your signs are. I tend to curl my lip. And I have to be honest, there are times when I curl my lip and I don't realise. And my partner actually says, you're curling your lip. And then I have to, okay, but do you know what your signs are? Some of us think we do and we don't. Okay, be aware of that. What is your leakage? Where are your leakage points? Communicating. We've talked about the non-verbal communication already. Making eye contact. Pay attention to those non-verbal cues. And, find that time to have fun, as I've said. Take hardships in your stride. I have to say, I've come here this evening and share a little something with you again. I've had a really tough year. I lost my mum last year and my emotions roller coasted. I had no idea that the emotional journey that I would have over the time that she's gone was going to be as hard as it has been. But the one thing that gets all of us through the family is when we start talking about the fun times. And very quickly, that feeling, that emotion of sadness that and I'm sure that, some of you will be able to identify the sadness just changes. That sadness has disabled me at times when I haven't been able to really do anything. So it's been really good for me to come here, really good for me to recover some of this because it's helped me in the emotional journey that I've been on. So that's been really good. But try and take hardships in your stride. Smooth over your differences in a humorous way. When you have those rows at work, when you have those little tensions going on, make a little joke. Be careful, but try, okay? Remember, we're dealing with other people as well. Make sure you set aside that quality and regular playtime. Have fun. Make sure you put some time in your diary to make that space for yourselves and play. Play with your children, play with your grandchildren. If you're one for animals, play with the animals. Just have fun. And let go of the grudges. Let go of those grudges. Choose your battles wisely. End conflicts that cannot be resolved and forgive. And as I say, these are basic skills that you can all go away and start practicing that will have an impact on your emotional intelligence. Okay. I'm going to finish now, but just on that note, remember I said to you, emotional intelligence is a massive subject area. And there are some things that I need you to just think about. Others, there's just 3 that I've put up here, to be aware of when you actually start going and practicing your, developing your skills. I've put that question there. Now, remember, gentlemen, it's in italics. All right? It's not a loaded question. Are women more emotionally intelligent than men? My point there, I didn't ask for the answer. I didn't ask for the answer. My point is that when you do start developing your emotional literacy, you need to think about certain things like gender, because we are at times different. Mental health. Sometimes when you're working with somebody and you're on yourself in terms of emotional intelligence, you need to be aware of what mental point you are. I've just mentioned to you that I have been through a bit of a traumatic year in terms of my emotional intelligence, and a bit knocked off because of sadness. Be aware, not just in yourself, but be in others. It might not be just an easy ride. Oh yes, emotional intelligence, I can sort this one out. There are other things going on for you and for other people. And also be aware of there are cultural differences when we're dealing with emotional intelligence. All of these things are things that you need to be thinking about, some considerations, and of course there will be more. And the last one I want to just share with you is just remember this. When people hone their emotional skills, they can become better at manipulating others. Are you with me? Okay. When you're good at controlling your emotions, you can disguise your true feelings. Are you with me? When you know what others are feeling, you can tug at their heartstrings and you can actually get them to do things that are against their own best interest. This is the negative side. There is a whole set of research and studies going on, and please look out for them on this part of emotional intelligence. Be aware, not just for others, but also in yourself. Okay. So, on that note, I am hoping, I'm running 5 minutes over, I am hoping that I have managed in an hour to cover these 3 aims. All right. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to have a review. You've got an understanding of how emotional intelligence can affect your relationships, performance, leadership development, and I really hope that I've given you some skills that you can start to practice immediately to support with your EI development. Okay, and that's my last slide. No matter the situation, never let your emotions overpower your intelligence. So thank you very much for listening and engaging. Thank you.